Alright, what's up everybody? Welcome to another episode of Wildlife Cake and Cocktails. We've got a very interesting show for you today. Might be a little bit heavy, but that's alright. We're going to work hard to get through it. My guest today, on my left is Yasmin Zelený. You know her from Faunographic with Matt Wright. She's a wildlife scientist, photographer, and much more. You can check out their work at faunographic.com.au or on Facebook at Faunographic and Instagram at _Faunographic. How you doing?
Well, thanks.
Yeah, enjoying the summer?
Yeah, as much as I can.
Yeah, cool.
Pretty hectic time of year.
And, you know, not that we're complaining, but no Matt today, obviously.
Yeah, no, I sent him on a plane. I don't know if I'll get him back, but...
Right, and whereabouts is he running around?
He's running a tour up in far north Queensland.
Okay, and storms on the way up there as well.
Yeah, so ex-tropical cyclone Owen's due to hit, so they're going to get a decent 300 mil, so I guess it'll be frogs tonight and nothing else.
Perfect time to go on a birding tour as an ex-tropical cyclone is bearing down on you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, look, I'm sure they'll have fun, like we mentioned anyway, like the rain will bring out a lot of really...
true tropics experience.
Yeah, and it will bring out a lot of really cool creatures anyway. Frog-wise, up there.
Absolutely. Any hopes, really.
Yeah, cool. Especially down here as well. We've been waiting for some rain. It's been pretty dry, so a little bit of rain will surely be a good thing. Our second guest today is Cesar Puechmarin. He's a Bachelor of Science graduate and from Blue Shroom Studios. He's a wildlife film producer, a vet nurse at Sanford Valley Hospital. You might know him from some of the Blue Shroom Studios series such as Pobblebonks and Gundagungans. The Warden series covering wildlife carers and people around the Southeast Queensland area, as well as Kingdom of Decay, a fungi short film coming out. You can check them out at Facebook on at Blue Shroom Studios or at blueshroomstudios.com. Cesar, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I've got to say, it's very kind of you to say that I'm a graduate, but I'm a dropout. So almost finished.
Almost finished.
But yeah, no, doing well. Thanks for having me. You know, it's really good to sort of get this stuff out and to use this sort of media platform to release information about our wildlife. So
anytime,
thank you.
More than happy to. And obviously through Blue Shroom Studios, you have a bit of a history of doing that yourself.
Yeah.
Big passion for wildlife film. Is that kind of your main focus at the moment? Or?
Yeah, man. To be honest, I only got into wildlife filmmaking because I wanted to create stuff about nature and wildlife. I didn't really know how else to do that. So it started with a film on mushrooms.
Which is now coming out?
Yeah, which is coming out at some point in the future. And then, just wanted to sort of highlight some conservation issues and stuff, and then also just making stupid YouTube videos like Pobblebonks and Gundagungans, which proves that I don't only have an annoyingly long name, but I can also make annoyingly long names in my productions. So.
Well, I thought it was a fantastic series. So obviously you guys have a lot of fun looking for frogs, which hopefully with this rain, you reckon you'll be heading out looking for a little bit of frog action?
I'd love to, whether or not I can sort of squeeze it in around this time of year.
It is busy for wildlife people this time of year.
It is, it really is. It's awful, especially with the winds and stuff, getting a lot of fledglings that are getting dropped in that are like...
Brings all the flies into our cake studio as well.
Adds protein, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
We'll smash it all down. Look, we should move on to our main topic for today. Now, recently, online, there's been a nice bit of interaction with a new film that you guys have released at Blue Shroom Studios. Owls on the Line, I think came out maybe 4 or 5 days ago, is that correct?
Yeah.
Cool. It's a very, very cool short film about powerful owls in Brisbane's Mount Coot-tha, where there is, at the moment, as we understand, a single breeding pair that has been occupying that site for 30 to 40 years, and enter a proposal for a 3-part zipline and canopy walk that the City Council wants to approve the development for in this breeding habitat.
You can only laugh, hey. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, when you say it out loud, you know, it does seem quite ridiculous. Look, guys, for anybody listening, for more details, you can go check out the Mount Coot-tha Protection Alliance at Mount Coot-tha zipline.org, or go to michaelberkman.com.au /zipline-submissions if you want to make an actual official submission about it.
You met Michael today?
No, I didn't actually meet him, but I did bump into the Greens, the Greens people down at the market.
Oh wow!
And, that's right. I forgot they had it was set up there.
And look, they're obviously quite big fans of you guys.
And they're protesting the zipline. Obviously.
Absolutely, that's what they were down there doing, and you know, they were also very interested in your film. They're big fans of it. Now, obviously, it's basically about this conflict between the owls and this development, correct?
It's a classic battle between nature and development and capitalism. And it's like not really a film that I wanted to make, but Jasmine actually introduced me to those owls probably just over a year ago.
Yeah.
Very kindly took me out and I saw the family, and it's hard not to just fall in love with them, and it's not something that you necessarily realize is there until someone explains it to you, that there's this family here and the importance of having them in that habitat. So yeah, it's just that classic fight, pave paradise to put up a parking lot. It's like,
yeah, I mean, absolutely. Look, Yasmin and Matt recently took us out, and thank you very much for showing us those amazing, powerful owl
You're
chicks.
welcome.
We didn't go and see the same pair at Mount Coot-tha. We went and saw another pair that's a little bit more accessible and try not to disturb them so much. They're absolutely beautiful up there. To see them in real life, they're quite. Well, first of all, they're stunningly big.
Yeah, they're impressive.
Yeah, and I can see how people develop an attachment to them, but I guess if people haven't seen them, I guess this film is a great way for them to, see some of that amazing footage as well.
yeah, well, much like how Jasmine showed me the owls, it's it's almost a duty to share that with other people.
So this was largely your kind of passion project that you...
Well, I approached Matt and Jasmine because I didn't have a lot of like nocturnal footage. Just in order to get the footage that I got, I had to do maybe like 10 separate outings and maybe a few on top of that I didn't see them.
Yeah, right.
And that's just to get little bits of footage without upsetting them too much. And even then, you see so much, and there's a bit in there that I didn't even put in the film because it didn't make sense to put it in there, like seeing them cough up pellets and stuff like that, footage of that, and
cool behavioural stuff, but not...
Great behavioural stuff, but not stuff that you necessarily want in that film. It's more it's more a people piece, as well. It's the people who have the connection with it, like Jasmine and Matt and Stephen Prowse. Who
there were some amazing characters in that film as well. Who you can tell that they have quite a connection to this species as well.
Yeah, exactly. That family in particular.
Yeah.
Helen Horton had seen that pair in the 80s herself. And that's not to say that they weren't there for much longer, but that's just like, that's when our records start coming in, I believe. I haven't found any earlier records.
I haven't found anything earlier than that, early 80s.
Yeah, okay. So since then they've been, and apparently pretty successfully, rearing some fledglings there.
Parents they have. Yeah, they're very good parents. They have, fantastic breeding record. Just the last few years, they've had 2 young every year, which is really quite exceptional. So they know what they're doing, and it would be a shame to jeopardise that, take a risk with that.
Yeah, obviously. And look, I guess one of the things that's come out of this is a pretty big online social media response to the film.
Yeah, which is the only thing I could have asked for, really. I didn't really know what... It was quite a rushed project. It's an idea that I had a while ago, and then like when I first heard about the zipline, and then I thought that it had been shelved. So, like, for whatever reason, I thought that it had been shelved. There seemed to be like a pretty strong response against it, and it was like, okay, well, this isn't going to happen. But then it just keeps on chugging through. Doesn't matter what the public throws at it. And this is the thing that I found most terrifying, is that no one seems to want this here except for Zipline Australia and the Brisbane City Council. Like, there aren't really any locals that want it here. No one thinks that it's good for the area. Jasmine said something great to me a while ago, that there are so many places in Brisbane that you could put a zipline like this and not create catastrophic, environmental impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thought that I had was, like, even just down from Mount Coot-tha, you have the Botanical Gardens, which is an artificial botanical garden. If you want to go zipping through a canopy, an artificial one would arguably be better than a natural one, but I suppose people don't want to be disturbed enjoying the Botanical Gardens.
That's where it's ending anyway.
That's where it's the thrill. Yeah. That's where the 6-line thrill ride is ending.
It's ending. So they're carving out of the mountain this zip line.
Yeah.
And there seems to be all this conjecture about how much they're clearing. Right? How long is the zip line? 1.2 k.
It's quite short. But yeah, the figures in terms of clearing, they've been really lowballed with the figures they've put out, and they continue to deny the possibility of the amount that needs to be cleared in terms of fire safety and around these new structures they're going to build. They're just going with the bare minimum to put out to the public, which I get. You know, that's appealing to people. They think, you know, oh, that's not that much in the grand scheme of things in that big green space, but it's not just about that. Look, there is a large majority of people that are against it, locals and people that aren't from, you know, this 4069 Mount Coot-tha area, but a lot of the people just aren't simply aware of the environmental impacts it's going to have. A lot of the comments I've seen, they have genuinely been saying, oh, surely it's not going to affect the wildlife that much, and it's just because they just don't know about the owls. That's all it is. And I've been finding from this film, once people have seen it and just know how intrusive it's going to be and how close it is to them, it changes their minds pretty quickly. So it's just a matter of people not really being informed.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, look, I mean, you are a bit more familiar with these birds through the Powerful Owl Project and through bird data and all your work with them than a lot of us are. What can you tell us about this habitat and how important it is for owls in the area? And I guess not just owls, but JC Slaughter, right? It's a wonderful walk. I've been through there at night time and seen gliders.
Yep.
There's plenty of very cool frogs throughout the area, and a lot more. Some very fantastic reptiles. I guess what's your opinion of the value of that habitat, particularly for this pair of a threatened species?
Well, extremely valuable habitat for a variety of fauna, as you said. I've seen, you know, from feather-tailed gliders, there's greater gliders there as well, koalas. It's a lot of significant species. But in terms of powerful owls, their habitat is disappearing increasingly. We're slowly chipping away at what's left of our green spaces and fragmenting this habitat, which is a massive threat. Also loss of hollow-bearing trees. Mount Coot-tha was heavily logged some time ago, so these large old-growth trees are quite scarce. So,
and I believe as we spoke about last time on the show as well, there was a paper modelling how they need to be close to creek lines.
That's
as well.
right. Creek lines and gullies are really important part of their habitat in terms of their roosting sites and their nest sites. So powerful owls don't cope very well with the heat. So while they'll use that dry sclerophyll landscape, they stick to the creek lines and gullies because they're cooler areas with denser vegetation, so it provides them more cover.
And that's why the creek line of JC Slaughter falls.
Incredibly important to them. Yeah. So they'll always be sticking along that creek line.
They're not simply going to be able to move 5-10 metres because there's a zip line.
That's right, they have to stay in that creek line. And where they are, I've walked quite far up the creek line, the vegetation doesn't completely cover or form a canopy the whole way up. The section that they utilise is probably the denser area. Right,
everything else around is a bit more open,
sclerophyll. It is a bit more open. Yeah. But I just think it's important. It would be important if it's any pair, but the fact that they are undeniably the most famous owl pair in southeast Queensland. If you think of, where can I go and see powerful owls? It's going to be Slaughter Falls. They're very well known, and they've been there for a very long time. So people do have such a connection with these particular birds, and I think to kind of look at them as something disposable, or they'll just find somewhere else.
A minor issue that you can kind of brush off as well.
It's not as simple as that. And even if it were the case that they go and try find somewhere else, like actually move out of the area, then you're putting them at risk of things like vehicle strike because they're having to kind of traverse this increasingly fragmented landscape we've created. And
like the hostile matrix in between of it that is not owl friendly as well.
That's right. So there's a lot of risks there that I just don't think we should be willing to take with a threatened species. No matter what kind of measures you put in place, there's still a lot of element of risk because every bird's different. You just don't know what's going to happen. I just don't think we should be willing to take that.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I guess that's a lot of the time the question. If we talk a lot about ecotourism and the value of our environment for Australia as a nation, but we continue to allow or even push through development that is damaging to the ecosystem and then tout ourselves as... Is it really is it really ecotourism if it's
No.
causing ecological impact?
That's right. It's kind of laughable.
Yeah. And look, this isn't to say, like you said, there's plenty of places where you could have a zip line, and there is fantastically
right.
operated zip lines that do bring really
Sure.
amazing ecological awareness to parts of the world, or in Costa Rica, and you know,
Vanuatu or whatever, I don't know. That's where Zipline Australia has their other one.
even here in Australia, that's right. Yeah.
I think it's just upsetting though that there seems to be so, you know, no one's looking at the environmental impact. They're just pretending to look at it. Right. That's what the Brisbane City Council is saying, that they've done all these surveys. I spoke to a lady from the Botanic Gardens saying that they've spoken to arborists or whoever who say that all the trees down there are old and they need to be cut down anyway, which, I mean, actually, if you talk to any ecologists, old trees don't need to be cut down.
Old trees are very, very important, particularly in this country.
Yeah.
And for those of our listeners who don't know, there's not a lot of, I guess, really large old growth trees in Australia, but the ones that do form, a lot of the time get hollowed out by termites and things like that. And these hollow bearing trees are some of our most important forest structures.
But Queensland has an awful track record for clearing.
Yeah.
You know,
the worst of any state in Australia, pretty much.
Yeah, and I would argue that we're getting up there with the worst, some of the worst in the world in terms of like how we treat our natural resources. Like you only have to look at the Great Barrier Reef. You only have to look at the arguments we're having. Why are we still arguing about putting a mine along the Great Barrier Reef? Why is this an argument? It's literally just the Queensland government and Queensland's track record. It's awful.
Yeah.
Queensland almost has no wilderness left. Like in the same way that Tasmania has wilderness, you know? You look at the size of Tasmania compared to Queensland, why don't we have any great stretches of wilderness left, really?
And what is out there is fragmented. Just for, you know, as a simple example, the Brigalow Belt, the southern Brigalow Belt, which is, for our listeners, it's a semi-arid forest ecosystem a little bit west from here on the eastern coastline. Used to stretch from northern New South Wales up to about Rockhampton, if you want to look at that up on a map. Massive expanse of forest. There's less than 9% of it left intact, and what is intact is in small fragments.
It's depressing. There are endemic species throughout Queensland, throughout Australia that like require these very specific habitats, and we just don't care.
Well, look, let's bring it back to the topic at hand. These powerful owls. They, you know, obviously, if they do go ahead with this kind of development, what kind of impacts are they going to experience? Like the direct impacts on them in terms of things like perhaps habituation and their predator avoidance. I know that there's been studies showing that kind of stuff seems to kind of disappear a little bit, which with increased human presence, and that can not always be a good thing. In fact, rarely.
That's something quite specific that you're bringing up, because we could look at something more simple in terms of, because that's getting quite specific in terms of
we're jumping into a bit detail.
I think you're jumping into something quite detailed, but yes, that's something too. But something as simple as nest abandonment or just failing to breed due to the disturbance. So Zipline Australia love to keep referring to the Cumberland Zipline, as they've done so in this report. So the Cumberland Zipline is a zipline that was built in 2016 in Sydney's Cumberland Forest. There were powerful owls. Their nest hollow was 500 metres from that zip line. So that's interesting as a starting point, is why 100 metres is acceptable off the bat for owls, when that's the one other example we have to draw from. So those birds had to move from that nest hollow, not necessarily because of the zip line. So there was a lot of other disturbance on the other side of where that hollow was, and also there was a bit of damage to that hollow as well. So they did move, and they moved closer to the zip line, but that could be because there was limited resources. So they moved 300 metres from the zip line and didn't successfully breed for those next couple of years. So you can't, I know someone likes to throw out, but they moved closer to the zip line in the Cumberland Forest. But they weren't successful. That's not a success story.
Yeah, they're no longer...
That's limited options, and then not thriving, just surviving.
That's no longer a source population. It is now pretty much a sink population, which is going to lower the overall number rather than increase it.
Like,
only
that's a
example
bad
of ours
sample
against
size.
yeah,
You're
it's
like
a horrible
one.
sample size.
One.
It is, yeah.
You know,
Like, that's bad science.
yeah.
So, but yes, it is still important to look at that,
Yeah.
despite because that's all we've got to latch onto.
When all you have is one observation, you have
And
to draw
even
it from
so,
what
if they're not breeding at 300 metres,
Yeah,
what's 100 metres tell you?
yeah.
And even so, every pair's different with what they're willing to tolerate. These owls, as you would have seen in that video in Owls on the Line, we speak about how they are quite used to people walking around them. They're situated along quite a busy walking track, the Aboriginal Art Trail track. But most people are walking by and not looking at them.
Yes.
Most 90-something% of people do not look up. No one ever looks up, so they don't see that they're there, and they're not feeling like all the attention is on them.
Yeah, wildlife is surprisingly aware of how aware
That's
you
right.
are of it.
Yeah, they are,
And
especially birds, I
you know,
find.
Yeah, definitely.
There's little things when you're watching an owl, even ones that are in busy areas, once the attention's on them, you can see that they are uncomfortable sometimes. And, you know, in terms of this suspension bridge and the treetop tour, people going through the airspace is completely foreign to these birds, and we don't know how they're going to react. You know, they were talking in the media about attacks. Look, it is a possibility. These birds have never attacked anyone before, but again, like I said, we don't. This is a foreign thing to them, so we don't know how they're going to react to people.
To people
in that
entering the
space.
canopy
The
space.
canopy space,
Yep.
because that's the one time they should feel safe from us. Normally, they're at the advantage. They're up high looking down on us. Most people are oblivious to them being there. So, you know, it's quite different. And Zipline Australia kind of want to make the owls a part of the story, which it's kind of...
A bit counterintuitive,
yeah,
I think.
it is.
Yeah.
It's tricky because, you know, they could say that they, you know, want to promote the conservation of the owls, blah, blah, blah. But if they're drawing so much attention to these birds, it could go the other way, like you said. So if people are going to visit these owls, because at the moment it's just birders, and there's pretty infrequent visitation. You know, most local people aren't aware they're there or exactly where they're roosting. So if Zipline Australia draw attention and make them part of the experience, and people, you know, over visit, especially when we have young chicks that are only a few days fledged and they're quite clumsy, if they feel like they have to fly away, if they get flushed, that makes them extremely vulnerable to things like currawongs and Teresian crows, which really bullying them. We lost a chick this year to corvids attacking it in its first few days out of the nest.
Yeah.
And it fell and died on the ground. So, you know,
Not at Mount Coot-tha.
not at Mount Coot-tha,
Yeah.
sorry guys. Yeah, this is one of our other pairs up in Caboolture.
How many? And there's not a lot of pairs around Southeast Queensland that we know of at the moment. Right?
It's unfortunate because, as you would have known from previous podcasts, the Brisbane Powerful Owl Project is very new, and I wish, you know, while this was happening, it was well established, like the Sydney project. But so we don't have too many pairs that we know of. And in terms of breeding pairs, I think we probably had, you know, chicks across the southeast that we were able to monitor this year. Probably 10 chicks. You know, that's not a lot.
No.
And
that's not to say that you're
there'll be
seeing
more
all
out
of them,
there,
yeah.
but we
Yeah,
don't
of
know
course.
yet.
Yeah.
We don't know yet, and we can't compare to the Sydney project because it's a very different landscape to the Sydney Basin. So it's we don't know, and it's unfortunate.
Well, you know, isn't that kind of one of the disappointing things here? Is, you know, there's one sample from the Sydney project, one breeding pair in the area, so we don't really know. The whole idea of erring on the side of caution when you have limited data,
Which is not being done.
no, of course not.
Yeah.
And that just seems like it seems very counterintuitive to anybody with a conservation rather than
course.
development mindset.
Well, and I have to say, while they have made an effort, you know, there's all sorts of mitigation strategies in here in this report. There is an interesting little sentence about the reputation of the business, which is, you know, an interesting thing to put in an ecological report when this should just be strictly about the birds, but they seem to be worried about reputation. rather than just...
Perhaps they should a little bit. You
Yeah,
know?
well, if they were, they should still be worried about their reputation at this point.
It is funny that, you know, to make them part of the story, where, you know, again, is it really ecotourism if you're impacting on them? And the powerful owl, it's such an iconic animal. It's on all the signage for Mount Coot-tha. It is the icon for the mountain.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know.
Every little green sign has a powerful owl head in the corner if you pay attention. They're absolutely all over plastered all over the mountain.
So to approve a development in their habitat and to purportedly be a supporter of this species at the same time it's just ludicrous.
No. Yeah. And I mean, there's obviously a lot of argument surrounding ecotourism all over the world. You know, as soon as you engage, you know, the environment or animals in any sense, you are impacting them, right?
Yeah.
But the goal should be limited impact.
Yeah, the goal should be cost benefit.
Exactly. And I think that there's a difference between saying we're going to put like these, you know, cloud station zip lines through the forest with limited clearing that you can go through quietly or whatever and observe the canopy at you know, a certain height. That's been done well in lots of places. Putting it right next to an owl hollow or next to, you know, where owls roost is not an intelligent way to design ecotourism. That's not creating something with the animals in mind. And that's the problem here. The problem here it's not about zip lines, it's not about ecotourism in the forest, it's about intelligent ecotourism, doing something that's low risk. Yeah. And that's not what they've done.
And look, they could still include the powerful owl in their story if they moved it to another site and say, hey, we moved it to this site because of powerful owls and ecotourism reasons, you know.
And that's the way to go about it.
Changing the development proposal because of ecological reasons, well, now that is ecotourism.
That's right. This is not a big game safari. You know what I mean? Owls are not the sort of animal that you can take a large group of people to go observe them in their habitat.
Sure.
You're going to see them during the day while they're roosting, so they're already, you know, pretty vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like Jasmine said, they're vulnerable from other birds. A lot of the time when you find these owls, it's because they're getting harassed by small diurnal birds. This is not the sort of animal to do that with, you know. So even to suggest that, I find ludicrous.
Yeah,
absolutely. They're a sensitive species at the end of the day. I think they've done the very bare minimum, which is not acceptable. And they seem to like to throw that out there, but we moved it 100 metres. If that was suggested in the first place, still unacceptable. 100 metres in a breeding territory of a threatened species, it shouldn't be anywhere near it.
Yeah.
And you know, you can talk about the possibility of the owls getting used to the zipline, but at the end of the day, they're going to have 2 new birds every year, 2 new chicks that can behave differently and have different comfort levels, have different experiences. I mean, we have another site where last year the chicks were more than comfortable with people walking around, but this year that same pair, the 2 chicks, are very flighty and they flush so easily, and then they become quite vulnerable to other birds. So there's going to be that new risk every year with 2 new birds. There's still always going to be an element of risk if this goes ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on the, I guess, habituation, boldness point, birds which don't run away from people, you know, they'll be more used to people, well, that's fine. Not all people have good intentions. Some people throw rocks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some people shoot arrows. Not always for hunting and eating purposes. Some people just like to shoot things that move. We've seen some terrible examples of animal cruelty recently, prosecuted in here in Australia as well.
Yep.
For people, you know, committing cruelty on kangaroos and emus and things like that.
You might think that someone couldn't do something to an owl, but yes, those people exist. We actually had one of our barking owls down in Talabudra die from an incident with BB guns. So
wow.
People like that are out there. It's unfortunately.
So to have these owls become more accustomed to people is, you know,
and to be more well known exactly where they are going to be
is not necessarily good for them.
No.
So that barking owl that you're talking about, that I think the interesting thing is that family lived in quite a busy area, right? An area that it probably lived there for a long time, and then it got developed and became a park. One of the chicks was shot with a BB gun. I think you and Matt have told me this story. The male owl is still there, but it's not breeding. It has no way to breed.
Hasn't found a partner.
So yes, there's an owl there, but it's not successful. Once it dies, that is the end of the species in that area. And I'd hate to see that in Mount Coot-tha.
Yeah.
Because that's really what's at risk. Do you mind explaining to them about like an environmental, how we were discussing the fact that there are more owls in cities, and it's because there's more prey available to them.
Oh yes. So in terms of powerful owls, some people might, you can see that they can do well in terms of prey availability because we, in built-up areas, we provide them with a lot of possums. So possums do very well in an urban environment. So there's plenty of prey for the powerful owls, but that doesn't mean that the powerful owls are thriving. It's
or that
kind
they're
of
breeding
That's
successfully.
right.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
the problem. Is it's an environmental trap because their lack of old-growth hollow trees. So there's plenty of food and they're surviving, but they're not thriving because of the lack of suitable habitat and hollow availability for them to successfully breed.
So I guess landscape-wise, you're kind of talking what is sort of called source sink dynamics.
Yeah.
Right. You might have a population that is next to a fantastic area for these animals to breed. Not a whole lot of prey items. The urban area around it is drawing them into it so they can hunt. But whatever they fledge there, their chicks are not as successful.
Well, they can't even breed because there aren't the hollows for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
right.
right. Yeah.
So unfortunately, if you look at their population density in say Melbourne, whatever population numbers of powerful owls in Melbourne and Sydney look healthy. They've got a lot of owls, but are they breeding? Like, that's a problem. That's what we don't know about here as well.
Yeah,
So we
that's
don't have
right.
the research that they do. But
Again, that's it's tough in those situations when you don't have a whole lot of data, and it seems to be the point where you err on the side of caution, particularly with threatened
Well,
species.
that's right. This makes this pair all the more valuable because we don't know.
I'm gonna have some cake.
Do
and
you
eat
need
my
a top? Do you
sorrows.
need a top up?
I do.
while
I
we're-
think I need some more cocktail.
It's a bit of a heavy situation.
Yeah, that's all right. But the problem is not to lose hope. It's
No,
not to,
absolutely.
there's no. Obviously, it feels. There's a lot of speculation about Graham Quirk and his relation to the zipline. I don't know about that. I hope that it's a community decision,
Yeah.
and I just hope that they give us the choice. Lots of people are opposing this zipline.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's good economically or not, I personally don't think that it will be that great. I think that I don't think locals are going to use it. I think that tourists will be probably won't use it.
Especially at the value.
And it's what they're calling $100 a ride.
Yeah.
I mean, does it? Why would you risk this habitat? Why would you clear that much land? Why would you risk these powerful owls? I don't see it. But I guess that's why I'm making the film. I'm not building a zip line.
Yeah.
I mean, they're acting like Mount Coot-tha already isn't one of the top tourist spots in Brisbane. It is.
Yeah.
Then the numbers there every year are huge. And if you want to talk about improving that experience, just give everything that's there a little facelift. Make the car parks a little bit better. Make some of the other picnic areas, fix them up a little bit more play equipment for kids, because people go there to have picnics and go for walks, and they're quite happy using the space that way.
It is an absolutely beautiful,
So
phenomenal green space that we have
Yeah.
right here next to the city. It is one of the most beautiful green spaces next to a large urban centre that we have.
Yeah.
That's
It
right.
is. It's for me personally. It's one of the gems of Brisbane. It's right there. 15, 20 minutes from the CBD.
Yeah.
And you're in one of the most magnificent forests that leads, if you go further into it, to some really amazing subtropical rainforests and
Yeah, that's
everything
right.
as you
Yes.
go over
Yeah.
the Diagular Ranges.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is all available to us, and
That's
it's
a big
being
corridor.
it's being put at risk because of a zip line, which one hates to take too much life advice from a cartoon, but anything that's been made fun of
South
in
Park.
South Park, zipline.
I know, it's so
Like
true.
if they make fun of it in South Park, can we make a rule? If
That's
they
a
make fun
rule.
of it in South
Yeah.
Park,
I think there'd be nothing left. I think that's the point of South Park. I mean, environmental aspects aside, Mount Coot-tha is it's under a DOGIT, right? It's under a deed of grant and trust, which
Yeah,
means
that's
it's
right,
public
public
land. They can't put a commercial venture there. Well, they legally shouldn't be able to.
unless it's allowed by.
Well, that's right.
By the state government.
By the state government,
And Brisbane City Council have to approve their own development, which is kind of interesting.
It's nice
if
when you
wanna
can improve
say,
your own
you know.
development.
It feels corrupt.
It
You know,
does.
it really
Yeah.
feels corrupt.
It does.
It's just not. Yeah, gosh, yeah, it really does make you a bit depressed, doesn't it?
Look, and it, you know, we don't want to, you know, harp on too much. Like you said, you know, do keep hope. There is plenty of people, you know, fighting for this, and you can make your submissions at Michael Berkman. That's berkman.com.au /zipline-submission.
And they've been really generous with the amount of time they've allowed us to make submissions as well.
Yeah, a
Oh,
total
yeah.
of 14 days, guys.
Yeah.
And for 3 of those days, the website was down.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. In terms of public consultation, it's been a bit disappointing. For example, they held this kind of face-to-face thing where you could go down to the gardens and speak to someone, but it wasn't a formal consultation process.
Which is why I believe it turned into a snap protest by pretty much all the people who showed up.
And in terms of the submission, to submit your objections, it's not an easy website to navigate, and it's not user-friendly,
Yeah.
which is why people like the Greens member Michael Berkman for Maiwa has had to, well, very nice of him and generous to take the time to put up a template submission for people to use to submit their objections, because it's quite hard, you know, to format it and navigate that website. So if you use his template, or I think Mount Coot-tha Protection Alliance have made a template as well that you can use, and just tweak it.
It's important to tweak it, I think, isn't it? It's
tweak it so you can, you know, put your own words in there and your own concerns. But yeah, it's been a bit disappointing.
Well, look, you know, there is plenty of people power behind this one. You know, at the same time, it's very unfortunate that there's more of this going on. We could discuss the zipline all day, and at the same time, as the Brisbane Powerful Louser is from Ziplines, the Eastern Curlew, which we did a fantastic show with Harry Sadler and his fantastic book, The Eastern Curlew, The Extraordinary Life of a Migratory Bird. And they do come through here in Brisbane, and they go to Moreton Bay, and that is also now at risk from development. So for our listeners, or for if you did miss the other show, this part of the east coast of Australia is in the East Australasian Flyway. It's a migratory flight path for migratory shorebirds and waders coming from Siberia along the East Asian coastline,
yep.
and then down. Do they also go to New Zealand, or is it specifically Australia, sort of down south? Yeah. I don't remember. But either way, you know, that is it's an amazing, like, 20,000 kilometre journey that they have to make, and
It's
part
an
of that.
incredible journey.
Yeah.
And that's why we have a responsibility to conserve these wetlands, because they are so important to these birds.
Absolutely.
That
And
overwinter here. It's the time they have to rest after a ridiculous journey, and to pretty much fatten up before they head back over for breeding.
yeah, and do the flight all the way back.
It's crucial environment that is meant to be RAMSAR protected.
Yeah. So yeah, in 1971, the Moreton Bay wetlands were RAMSAR protected. Well, I mean, RAMSAR's been going since 1971, but I'm not sure when exactly Moreton Bay was added to it. As part of the East Asian Australasian Flyway, it is an important wetland. RAMSAR is an international, I guess, treaty on wetland protection, for which Australia is part of. We are there's currently a plan for a $1.4 billion development on the foreshore, which was called clearly unacceptable by the Department of Environment, yet somehow also
Seems to slip through, doesn't it?
Somehow.
It's this incremental destruction of habitat. It's like there has to be a point where you say no more.
Yeah.
And this is the concern. It's like, what point are we have passed the point that we should have stopped.
They just think little bit by little bit. Oh, it's just a little bit.
Well, the same thing that
that's
happened
just
with
a little bit.
the same thing that happened with this development.
Yeah.
It used to have more of the RAMSAR wetland in it. That's currently being reduced to around 50 hectares of RAMSAR wetland facing development, but that's still in the feeding grounds
and it's still
of these birds.
It's still unacceptable.
Yeah.
That I think that's down to 42 hectares, they're saying, of the RAMSAR wetland.
And you only just told me, I believe, that was news
it's
to me, that the
unacceptable.
department has again said that it's still unacceptable.
Yeah,
and there's still
resubmitted
somehow
it.
plans for it to go ahead.
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's been a lot of controversy around how this came to be. I mean, this development has been pushed by federal and state government for some years now. 2015, I think, Queensland government put forward their support for the project, and it's just kind of been delayed until they kind of get the answer that they wanted.
No, the developer wants anyway. The Walker Corporation.
Yeah. So, interestingly, if we're gonna, I mean, it's in all the media, so we may as well cover it. And it's fun. So, would have seen in the media this week kind of the background to how this came to be, because at the moment this project is to be reviewed under the EPBC Act, which unfortunately, I don't know how it got to this stage, but
that's the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation
and
Act.
Unfortunately, the track record with projects assessed under this act, very, very few ever get rejected. So there is a good chance that this could go ahead at this point, despite the fact that last year the Department of Environment said it was completely unacceptable because it would damage that environment in an irreversible way. You can't go back from that kind of development in such a fragile ecosystem. So when the original development was put forward, yes, the Department of Environment told the environmental minister at the time that it was unacceptable. He didn't take that advice, held off on it for a while. So the Walker Corporation, which have been regular donors to political parties for the past decade, donated $225,000 to the federal Liberal government and $23,000 to state Labor.
Who are in power in
Queensland at the time and currently.
Yeah.
So this is last year, I believe, and still nothing was happening. So then the Walker Corporation threatened legal action against the federal government.
The Office of the Environmental Minister, I believe.
And nothing happened with that. Nothing progressed. So then they withdrew the original proposal and put it forward again at a smaller scale, which is where we've come to this 42 hectares. And which was still unacceptable, but that has seemed to kind of get over that initial hurdle, and that's where we are right now. It's still a massive development. It's apartments, hotels, a marina, a convention centre. It's a pretty significant
well as I understand, they don't have any environmental applications in at the moment, but isn't it interesting how I guess party donations somehow always seem to get certain environmentally non-sound developments moving.
Well, essentially just sets a really bad example for all
party donations and threats of legal action.
Of course, yeah.
Well, with this project has been, it's kind of under the global spotlight now because it is a RAMSAR listed wetland.
Yeah.
So we're kind of under a microscope now to set an example, because if this goes ahead, it really looks terrible for all of the other RAMSAR listed wetlands, not only in Australia, which I think there are about 66 in Australia, but worldwide.
Well, look, I think that's one of the maybe one of the good things that does come out of this development. Not that it happens, but the fact that attention gets thrown on the fact that Australia, despite all of our big talk in terms of ecosystems and environment, we're a huge extinction rate.
That's all it
massive
is.
Rate of massive rate of approvals of damaging projects, which continue to put species at risk and put money into the pockets of people who have
the power.
Oh, and also have donations. Who make donations to power.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing at this point.
And Moreton Bay is also home to, what do we got? We got green and loggerhead turtles, vulnerable species, dugongs, of the East Australian flyway birds. There's bar-tailed godwits, grey-tailed tatters, and of course the phenomenal Eastern Curlew. Southern right whales also exist in the area. Amazing tidal mudflats and seagrass beds that are really, really important habitat there in Moreton Bay. And even some really amazing isolated coral bommies throughout that.
So in terms of going back to the Eastern Curlew, just to give it some perspective, because we talk about migratory birds all the time, right? Like you hear this migratory birds, doesn't resonate with a lot of people, and I was probably one of them for a long time until earlier this year. I was in the Northern Hemisphere and I saw an Eastern Curlew. And I thought, that could be the same bird that I could see in Australia. You know what I mean?
You
That's
might
like
get to see
literally
that
the
on the other
exact
side of
same
the world.
individual
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
could
I
migrate to Australia.
I think it's about 75% of the birds do come to Australia to overwinter.
Yeah.
So it's a huge number that we're responsible for.
Yeah, and
essentially.
and a 3 in 4 chance that you could see that
Yeah.
that individual here in this
it's
country.
insane. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And that's the sort of perspective that you don't get with these projects. You know what I mean? They look at short-term gain. I don't like, and obviously we're going political, but I don't want to get too political.
Yeah.
But that it's this constant issue we have with like short-term gain.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is, as a society at the moment, is we're incentivizing capitalism, we're incentivizing income, we're incentivizing making money. And if you do that, then you will always make money,
Yeah.
regardless of the impact on the environment or anything else. And it's important not to lose. It's important not to lose hope. That's the most. You can fight for these things, and we do. Why we'd make a movie like this, why people like Michael Berkman are fighting against these decisions, is that we do have a say. And it's important to make your voice heard. Don't be fatalistic, or don't be what they call a slacktivist. Don't sit at home and grumble that this is
It's
awful
happening,
and this is
yeah.
happening. You have a say and you have a voice.
Yeah.
You've just got to make it heard.
Yeah, and you also do have to, in some senses, be in it for longer than the political election cycle.
Of course. Which, I mean, is the biggest issue with a lot of these decisions. These senators, or like whoever it is that are passing these, they're doing it so that while they're in power, they make a certain amount of money, and it makes them look good, or it gets them re-elected. No one's thinking about the long-term goals.
It's called getting it while the getting's good. Right?
Exactly, but unfortunately, there are issues with education. With like people are ignorant of these issues. It's a whole system issue. You know what I mean? It's not just corporation versus environmentalism. That's not the argument here. It's just the way that we're geared.
Yeah, I think it's when it comes down to it, it's a question of value.
Yeah.
Right. It's there's been many kind of peaks and valleys in Australia's kind of valuation of its environment. We even had the phase of where we were talking about saving landscapes rather than focusing on saving species.
You're right.
And as that happens, species started disappearing rather quickly as not enough was being done for those landscapes. In the end, you need to save the landscape and the species and just value the environment more and put more effort into protecting
Well,
it.
it's very short-sighted,
We
essentially.
are. And we need to protect biodiversity. This
Yeah.
is like one of the biggest, one of the main issues in Mount Coot-tha is as soon as you get rid of those powerful owls, you lose an
You
apex
disrupt
predator.
the system.
Yeah.
And you're like, it'll cause trophic cascades, there's all these issues that will arise just from that. It may seem like one bird or one species, but it's a network, you know what I mean? It's a network that relies on the whole system.
Just as an example, there's certain areas of Australia I know that now have reduced predation where green browse is being reduced by the amount of herbivory going on. So for example, wow, smashing it. There's certain areas where for example, let's just take Mount Coot-tha for example. If you do remove those powerful owls, you're going to have more gliders,
Yes.
more possums, because there's no predator taking them out. They're going to increase the amount of feed that they're taking from all the trees in the area, and they're going to suffer as a whole population as that vegetation suffers as well.
Really good point, because one of the suggestions in the Owl and Raptor report was to put up nest boxes. Now, we all know what kind of animals occupy nest boxes. Yes, sugar gliders love nest boxes.
Yeah.
Possums love nest boxes. Powerful owls don't love nest boxes. So while you think this is a solution for a powerful owl, there's one record of a powerful owl occupying a nest box, and it was in 2007.
Yeah.
That is not, they don't readily utilise nest boxes, let alone successfully breed in them. But what is going to utilise a nest box?
Sugar
Yes.
gliders and possums.
Possums.
We're going to have a
I believe-
And you're going to
population
create
boost.
a problem there.
Yeah.
Isn't there? Wasn't that even the kind of evidence with golden-shouldered parrots? You put up nest boxes for these parrots and stuff, and they end up using them and then being eaten by sugar gliders. And
Right.
Swift parrots.
Swift
parrots.
Yeah, swift parrots.
Yeah, there we go.
And now we're
Yeah.
culling sugar-tailed gliders.
Sugar gliders.
Oh, really? To
They call
protect
them
the
sugar
swift parrots
gliders.
as well?
Yeah.
But the
Oh,
sugar
wow.
gliders that are introduced to Tasmania.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
So
Well, it sounds
yeah.
like they need some else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're trying to create an artificial solution there. Nest boxes can work very well for some species, but they just don't for powerful owls, and they work very well for their prey species, which are already quite abundant in that area. It's not something you kind of want to tamper with.
Yeah.
Especially if those owls are then, you're putting up the nest boxes for them, and they're not going to, if they don't successfully breed, and then all of the possums are, they don't have two young hungry children to feed.
Yeah, that's
So,
exactly right.
Yeah, right.
I don't
Well, I guess it all comes back down to that question. Why does development always take precedent over environmental issues, even though, some of those environmental values and biodiversity values are enshrined under legislation? Why when those environmental values are a problem for development, do we find a way to skirt around the rules and make the development happen anyway, rather than just accepting that this is important for our ecosystems?
Well, our economy is, like we were saying before, our economy is incentivized to make money, to make more money. And so you will always, and the issue with incentivizing anything is that you will get the result that you want, regardless of the consequence.
Competition
And
will happen.
That's what happens. I had a friend recently, I was having an argument with him about the Great Barrier Reef, and I was, for whatever reason, we won't go into it, but he said, all the people that, say that we should protect the Great Barrier Reef, because of ecotourism, saying it's worth ecotourism as well, economically it's important. You go, how many of those people have gone to the Great Barrier Reef to see it? And I sort of had to say, well, that's fine as long as you think that the only value the Great Barrier Reef has is on, it has economic value. The only value it has is economic and is in tourism,
Right.
which it's not. And
it protects the coastline. It provides a nursery for our fisheries,
Exactly.
which is a massive part of the economy up there for the seafood and fisheries.
Yes.
Protecting the coastline from tropical storms,
Yep.
tidal fluxes. What else? What other ecosystem? Cleaning of the water by the filter feeding of the coral polyps and whatever other hydrozoans and all kinds of crazy things that are down
which has
there.
just happened, the massive
Yeah.
coral
Yes,
sporing
just
events,
happened, yeah.
Which is,
I think Biopixel from
quite a
GCU have
spectacle.
filmed it
Yeah,
this year,
right.
which
it's really
is amazing.
cool footage of it.
Awesome.
So, I mean, this is, gosh, we're getting away from powerful owls, but it shows you that this is not just like a single issue about the powerful owls.
No.
I'm not, obviously I love the owls, and that's why I made the film, but, this is a grander issue. It's not, if it was a beetle that was getting pushed out, that I would have been equally as inclined to make the film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just happens to be that owls are big and charismatic and look pretty.
Yeah.
That people listen, and that that's what we have to use.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be a problem with Toondah Harbour as well, as people just think, they're just brown birds on the beach
Yeah,
with
right.
shorebirds.
Yeah.
And they're very hard for people to differentiate between, because when they're here in Australia, they're not in that fantastic breeding plumage.
Yeah.
Sometimes just before they leave, you can catch them, going into that plumage. But most people wouldn't even see them blending in with the mudflats or know that they're there or know the significance. And like Caesar was saying before, it's an education issue as well. People are just unaware, and that's not their fault, which is why the people who are educated should not just sit around and whinge about it and get it out there like we have with the film.
Well, I mean, if anybody does want to, read up more on the Eastern Curlew, I definitely recommend checking out Harry Sadler's Eastern Curlew book. They're just a phenomenal bird. If you don't know about their how absolutely incredible their life history is, go check it out. Migratory shorebirds, one of the coolest animals in the world.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're amazing.
So I guess in the end, we are the ecotourism nation that we claim to be, or are we just
Supposedly.
largely a bunch of hypocrites? God,
it's
Unfortunately,
it's awful because as a society, as Australians, we tell the world that we love we love nature. People are all about camping and about going to the beach and whatever. Yet we treat it like shit. Excuse my language.
Our land abounds in nature's gifts.
Which is what I'm worried about
something
with
in
this
our
rich and rare.
beauty, rich and rare?
It's
Yeah.
ecotourism, but all the people that are going to be rocking up are probably not really going to be that appreciative. We're probably going to see a lot of litter and rubbish left
Yeah.
everywhere, and I just
It'll
feel
be
like
catastrophic.
yeah, I think so. You know, from what I've seen from those other kind of major tourist destinations, is sometimes a little bit frightening with the way people disrespect the natural areas that have been opened to us.
Woo, zipline!
Yeah.
But how do we change that public perception? You know, how do we change that if it's ingrained? Even the way that people camp and the way people, you know, this beach culture that we've got of, you know, especially here in southeast Queensland, where we've got out, you know, big, long, eastern-facing beaches along Moreton Island, along Stradbroke, along Fraser, along, you know, Rainbow Beach, all those sort of areas, is that, you know, we expect people to go to those areas, but they don't treat them with any respect.
No,
and even actually driving on the beach, you'd think that, I know it sounds awful, and it's, you know, it's something I've done myself, is driven on the beach, but that act itself is a horribly destructive act. You know, a lot of things nest on the beach. You know, a lot of birds nest on the beach. Or, you know, turtles obviously nest on the beach.
And there's a lot of subsurface action,
that's
a lot of
right.
invertebrates underneath that sand that...
Exactly. And so, you know, when you have a culture that this sort of behaviour is ingrained, you know, is, you know, bush bashing in you know, in your four-wheel drive through the forest, and, you know, how do you change that when people already don't care about what they're doing to the habitat? How do you change that perception? How do you alter people's, you know, view?
Thoughts,
It's hard
Jasmine?
because people continue to make excuses for themselves and for that behaviour. So you could say, oh, like people are doing it with the Mount Coot-tha zipline. Oh, who cares? It's already been logged before. Who cares? There's already TV stations up there and a restaurant. Completely different. So, you know, people always make an excuse, or if you say you're against a zipline, oh, that's stupid. Weren't trees cut down for your house? You know, they always make up some sort of ridiculous excuse, and it's always the same kind of comment that you see. Didn't you drive here? You know, things like
I've
that.
had that argument with someone recently.
Yeah, you see the same thing all the time, and it's hard. You know, you're not going to change everyone's mind, but there definitely needs to be a big shift in attitudes and how we think everything is so disposable, or that we can just chip away at little, you know, things, you know, little section at a time, because you don't notice when you're just getting rid of, you know, a little bit of a green space at a time, a little bit of wetlands at a time, and then eventually, you know, on the in the grand scheme of things,
And really all you're leaving is a little
nothing.
facade along the highway, so you don't see all
essentially.
the destruction
Pretty
as you
much,
go past.
Pretty much. That's the kind of view people have, is just the chipping away.
Yeah. Well, look, I guess that's why you guys are running the wildlife tours, trying to educate, trying to get the message out there, and yourself, obviously, trying to bring a bit of education and compassion towards wildlife through film as well.
Yeah, it's a small thing, you know, and as I said, it's not a film I really wanted to make.
Well, it was definitely inspiring. I was definitely inspired by it, and
thanks,
as soon as I saw it come on, I definitely wanted to have a chat with you guys about it. So, look, if you know, there's one person that you've gotten more passionate about the issue. I was already very aware of the zipline, but then seeing the film, it really struck home, and I hope it does for a lot of our listeners and for any of your viewers.
Thanks,
out there
man.
as well.
It seems to be the response that we're getting, which is I'm really pleased. I wasn't sure what would happen. I thought often with a lot of that conservation filmmaking and wildlife filmmaking, you're preaching to the choir, you know.
It's going to stay inside your social bubble somewhat.
Exactly, and there seems to be a lot of research that wildlife filmmaking doesn't help conservation that much, really. Like, the people who are watching it already care, and the people who don't care doesn't change their mind a lot of the time. It's an upsetting statistic, but the response that we're getting online is a lot of people going, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And that's been a really uplifting experience, I find.
Well, that awareness can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and you know, especially for a project that was so rushed. Like, it's so rushed. You know, we weren't given a lot of time, and
you were trying to get this film out before the submissions date.
well, I didn't know when the submissions date would be, but I wasn't. I didn't expect to have to release it this week. Put it that way. But I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad it's changing minds. And, you know, I'm also glad I don't have to work on it anymore.
Well, look, it's out there now. It's a fantastic film. Hours on the Line. awesome work and awesome footage from you guys at Pornographic there as well. That's throughout it. And people can check it out at Blue Shroom Studios on Facebook or blueshroomstudios.com. I'm sure it'll be circulating on the social media if you just go and look up Owls on the Line. I'm sure it'll be there somewhere. All right, well look, if anybody else does want some more details on it, I think we pretty much have to wrap it up about there. But do go check out Mount Coot-tha, that's MOUNTCOOT-THA zipline.org for the Mount Coot-tha Protection Alliance. Or as we mentioned, go to michaelberkman.com.au/zipline-submission to make your personal submission. You have until the 14th or 15th?
14th.
Yeah.
Do make your
14th.
submissions. It's really important.
Get in there and do it, guys. It'll be a massive help, not just for anybody living in Mount Coot-tha, but all around Brisbane and Southeast Queensland. This is, this is our biodiversity, and it's ours to protect or ours to lose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Now, I guess on the way out, pornographic.com.au, on Facebook at Pornographic. Where else can people find your fantastic photos? And any more tours coming up?
Yes, I think they're all closed off now, but we have a Cape York one coming up in January. But I think we'll be doing the same things next year. So Tassie Tour, FNQ, and Cape York. Seem to
FNQ
be the main
being
ones.
Fun
Fun
Off
Off
Queensland,
Queensland,
there we
sorry
go.
guys. But the Tassie one was a huge success this year. It was absolutely fantastic.
You mean the TAS?
Amazing seabird photos from that one. Is that where all those
Yeah.
albatross shots came?
Awesome, yeah, off Eagle Hawk Neck, pelagic trip, awesome albatross.
You have your own personal page as well, where you post a lot of your cool photos as well, don't you? On Instagram?
Yes, so yeah, there is the _pornographic, or I'm Jasmine Z, has all of the
Jasmine
all
Z.
wildlife. Pretty easy to remember.
Or as I
Wildlife
thought
photos.
your name was until I met you. Jimenez.
And Caesar Puechmarin, great to have you on the show. I'm butchering that name again. Puechmarin?
You can't. That's
Puechmarin.
yeah.
Puechmarin. All right, I got it. Finally,
I can't actually say it properly myself, so don't worry.
Caesar Puechmarin. All right, cool. And that's blueshroomstudios.com or Blue Shroom Studios on Facebook. Kingdom of Decay coming out. Papa Wonks and Cunningungens and the Warden series. And check out Owls on the Line right now. The fantastic short film.
Starring Jasmine
Jasmine
Zelený
Zelený.
as one of the
Looking up into the trees.
As girl who looks up at tree.
Girl who looks up a tree. I think he did. Yeah, he did a great job. Fantastic role. I think he nailed it.
You did the great little one-liners at the end of it.
yeah.
I put you
The
right.
inspirational quotes.
The inspirational quotes. It's like.
She's good for that. She's always got a few
little nuggets.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers.
We'll finish off our sour owls.
These are delicious, by the way.
No worries. Happy to have you back on anytime. Particularly, there's more film coming out. And guys, do go check out Owls on the Line. It's out today. Make your submissions at michaelberkman.com.au/zipline-submission. And we shall be back soon with plenty more wildlife cake and cocktails.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.